Hey everyone, welcome back to Founder Story. Today we have Jeremy Cotter, partner at YouRise. And Jeremy, you and I have had some great conversations, by the way, a lot of laughter. But this is a little bit more about Jeremy, though. He has a goal to have better brain health and longevity for over 1 billion humans, which is amazing. I love that mission. And Jeremy's been leveraging tech experience from Google and Meta to help, and you've been at forefront of some of the world's impactful applications, ones that I've used throughout my life as well. But let's go back to before the successful Jeremy existed. Why did you get into this industry, and maybe what attracted you to being at the forefront of technology?
Thanks so much, Daniel. To answer your question, what got me into what I'm doing now, health technology, was really what it sounds like, the incredible opportunity to combine health with technology, especially in the age of AI. That's the professional piece. And then the personal piece was something that really hit close to home. And that was when a family member of mine about 6 years ago was diagnosed with a terminal condition that doctors couldn't face. And it was something similar to Alzheimer's. And that was devastating for our family. And so it was the combination of that personal piece and the professional piece that made things come together.
Wow, I mean, yeah, I could see how impactful that can be on someone's life when you're faced with something that happens to a loved one, you want to then solve those issues. Um, so I know you've talked about what are people ignoring to make themselves more money, and I'm curious on the side of business, or even I know you've been at the forefront of being an employee at different corporations and working in C-suite levels. So what do you think people are getting wrong when it comes to when they want to make more money?
Two things, Daniel, and they might surprise you. The first being health. And what I mean by that is human health is the foundation of almost everything you do. Your energy level, your focus, and your ability to execute is affected by um, all those things, right? Is affected by how well your brain's working, how you feel at any given point in the time, any time in the day. And so that's ultimately a huge piece right there. The second piece is around the mindset that you bring. And here it's the investor mindset that I think can be really useful for people in that are looking to make more money. And that's thinking of almost everything you do as an investment, whether it be how you spend your time or how you spend your actual physical resources. There are key fundamentals, which I'm happy to discuss, that will inform how successful of a return on investment you'll make.
Yeah, can you dive into those? Because I'm very curious.
Absolutely. So the first is around emotional mastery. And that again, it might be a surprise, right? Um, in the sense that it's, people talk about intelligence, but the emotional component is just as important, if not more. And it's about staying calm in the ups and downs. And especially in the tech industry, it's about not having that sense of fear of missing out of sort of the new shiny thing that you're coming across, right? And the second piece is around people, right? So when we look at whether it be a public company or whether it be a private company, it's about the people. And what I mean by that is, at a public company, it's about the management team. And at a private company, at a startup, it's about the founding team. And when you dive into it, there are multiple layers, right? Their character, their network, their history of achievement that are going to inform the success of the company. And the final piece is around the sphere of understanding that you have. And what I mean by that is your understanding of the product and the market is going to make a huge difference in how well you invest your money or your time, right? Because if you are actually using the product yourself, for example, and you're testing it, or if you've spent time studying the market, that's going to make an enormous difference in terms of how educated your investments are. So those are the three pieces that I would look at.
So if somebody comes to you and says, Jeremy, I have this great idea, I'm solving this problem. Out of the things that you just mentioned, maybe those three, is there one in particular where you would first say, okay, they have to have the great network or the great knowledge or the great certifications or whatever it is that's most important to you at first, where you would even want to pursue the conversation further when it comes to somebody looking for an investment?
Yes, I'm going to look at the person and the team first. And Daniel, it'd be great if it was just a simple checklist that would answer everything. But unfortunately, it does take time a lot of times to really get to know that person, get to know that team, and yes, those things that you mentioned are part of the equation, right? How strong is this person's network? What is this person's record of achievement? Uh, how is sort of how are they viewed by both their colleagues and the people around them? All those things are gonna affect that equation, but it does take time.
I can imagine, right? I mean, trust takes time to build with anything. If you're going to give your money to somebody, I would think that there'd have to be a certain level of trust that they're not going to just spend it or even know what they're doing. I guess you could say you are an expert in whatever, but you really have to trust that person. So when it comes to you and making sure that you're at your best, there's a lot of conversations around now, like LeBron James spends $1 million a year, this other person spends $2 million a year or $100 million or whatever it is. I've heard that you and I were talking about you spending upwards of $1 million a year to improve your human health. There's a lot of talks around people are willing to go at any length to ensure nowadays that they are at their peak best, and that could be a variety of tests to supplements to strategies that doctors give them, but what is it that you do personally to ensure that you are at your best?
Yeah, and as I answer that, I also want to mention that it's not just about me. It's about investing in the ecosystem, putting that money into technologies, people, and products that are going to advance science in a meaningful way, advance progress in a meaningful way. So stepping back for a moment and talking about how I implement that in my daily life and what I do is, Daniel, people don't like to hear this, but it starts with the fundamentals, right? It starts with the ones that you've heard a million times: sleep, exercise, nutrition. Um, but actually, ironically, even within those fundamentals, you can get much more educated and much more nuanced in a way that allows you to take, say, for example, something that where you're operating at kind of an average level and take it to more of an expert level, right? So I think it's that old 80-20 rule of like focus on the things that matter the most and deep dive into those. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So around sleep, I'm I was an executive at a sleep science company that raised from the National Institute of Health. And one of the things that I realized during that time was that breathing is actually one of the core fundamentals of good sleep, right? Because people talk about all these different pieces to it. And yes, sleep is a multi-part equation that is both physical and mental. But it starts with being able to breathe well, because when you're semi-unconscious, how well you breathe is going to impact how much oxygen is coming to your brain, how either interrupted or non-interrupted your sleep is. So the question is, how do you improve your breathing? Well, it turns out there's a lot of different ways you can do that. And the first way is totally free, right? It's changing the way the position with which you sleep. Sleeping on your side versus on your back. It's going to open your airway. The second is using technology to track how you're breathing, right? So some of the more common consumer available options are beginning to do that, but there are currently medical grade options that can track exactly how many interruptions in your breathing you have at any given moment and exactly how efficient your breathing is, right? So I kind of went off on a tangent there around one of the core fundamentals around sleep, but in terms of thinking about how I approach this, that might give you a better sense.
Hey, I have sleep apnea and I have to use a CPAP machine. So I know all about what you're saying. Um, if I don't use it, then I don't sleep because I'm not breathing. And if I don't sleep, 3, 4, 5 months down the line, because that's happened to me in my life where, my machine broke and I was traveling too much and I wasn't in a place to get the machine fixed. After those months, I was in some of the worst mental state I've ever been in. So I can totally relate to that one thing that's, not happening to then how that can trigger or domino effect your entire life. Like I felt like my life was collapsing on me because just wasn't doing this one thing. Uh, I'm curious on when you're investing in these companies and these founders are coming to you, uh, or you're seeking out these companies to invest in. Are they normally, when it comes to health, solving a problem that either impacted them or impacted somebody else? Is that normally the common string, or are they just looking in the marketplace and saying, "Oh wow, this is something I want to solve"?
Both. I've come across founders in both categories. I think that it is helpful whenever possible to have some kind of connection to what you're doing, like that it has some kind of meaning to the person that's starting this company and is about to begin a 10-year potentially plus journey on what they're working on, right? And so I think the founders that do have some kind of connection, whether it be someone that they know or themselves that has faced the problem that they're trying to solve, I absolutely think that's an advantage. Now, there are also people that start companies around, say, enterprise needs, solving a hospital need or solving a company need that seems a little bit more removed. But even there, oftentimes it's going to help if they've, in some way, either their customers or themselves have come across that problem.
How do you look at partnerships or multi-founder fit? The CEO, CMO, whatever that looks like. I know many people that had great partnerships. I also know many people that have had disastrous partnerships. And yesterday we were talking to a gut health company where the founder sought out a doctor who is well known in that space to then partner together with, because he is not an educated expert in the field, just looking for a problem to solve, which I thought was an interesting approach. But how do you approach, whether it's you or these companies you're investing in, looking at how they fit as partners?
That's a great question because the answer, unfortunately, is most of the time those partnerships don't work out. And the reason is twofold. One is that when an early stage company, say a startup or small business, is trying to partner with, there's sort of two configurations actually. One of them is small company to small company partner. Another is small company to big company, and we can think of this also if like the example that you said where you're talking about a celebrity figure or something like that. A celebrity figure is sort of like a big company, and a non-celebrity figure is sort of like a small company, right? So these types of partnerships can either be small to small or small to big, right? In both cases, there are going to be inherent problems, right? The big company really could kind of care less what's going on with the small company, right? They've got very little incentive to really pay attention. The small to small, they're both sort of scrapping for resources, and so because of that, they have very little opportunity to really help each other. So you got to take those things into account anytime that you're going into a partnership, and that's part of what allows you to make it successful.
I'm glad you bring that up. So for me, um, I've only had success when I look at partnerships around people that we're doing things on similar, we're helping similar people, but we have complementary skills versus just starting off with a partner. I've never started with a partner. It was like many years down the line because of that fear, because of the nightmare stories that I've heard about many partnerships. But that I like how you put that though. Um, I I find it really really interesting how everything in history seems to come back. So if we look at marketing, email newsletter was a thing, and then it kind of disappeared, and then it was only about social media ads, and then all of a sudden nowadays, everyone is launching a newsletter. Like 5 years ago, everyone was launching a podcast. So how are you seeing this landscape? Because I know you You publish a newsletter, and I know it's something important for you all. So, what are you seeing as a benefit to people? And then also would love to learn more about what your newsletter is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, starting with what we're doing, I've been really happy to see the success in terms of we got a very high open rate, we've got a very quickly growing user base, and the reason for that, Daniel, is we're not approaching things in a traditional way. And to answer your question around, how is this space evolving around media consumption, newsletters versus podcasts, and so forth. Yeah, most newsletters are trying to sell, say, an e-commerce product, or they're basically trying to like tack on content on top of a product they're already selling. We came in with a totally opposite approach. We came in with, hey, let's provide really valuable content to the people that receive this newsletter, and then if there's a product or a technology that is interesting to them, we can include that, but that's not the core focus. And the second piece is we focus on something that is so core to your everyday life, which is your health, and more specifically, a huge focus on your brain. And what are all the things that are affecting your brain health, right? And so that right away is unique in itself. But finally, taking a balanced approach and saying, what are the strengths and weaknesses of whatever's trending in sort of the popular media right now? It might be about some supplement, or it might be about some new health technology. What are the pros and cons of it in a balanced way? And so I think most newsletters are not doing any of those things, right? And most, in that sense, that leaves a big opportunity for people that are looking to genuinely provide value.
That approach makes a lot of sense. You're providing all this value. You basically are a media outlet. Essentially, you become a media outlet, and then you can bring products and services into the realm in the future. How do you see the future of media in general? I was just at the National Association of Broadcasters event. There was 60,000 people from media there, and what I found. What I learned the most was, traditional meeting content creators, meeting social media. You have all these different medias trying to vie for our attention. How do you see the future of media when you have this traditional sense? You have people like yourself who you can just create your own media. I myself here, I've created my own media. I don't have to rely on a TV host, or I don't have to apply to be a host and do this. We could just turn on our phone, and now we are a media outlet in a sense. But how do you see this traditional sense of media mixing with the new age of media and content creators who are becoming like their own platform?
Well, I think there's a lot of good news, surprisingly, Daniel. And the good news is that there's a long tail. And what I mean by that is people think, oh, there's more and more media sort of creators and more competition, therefore there's less opportunity. But what we're seeing is this sort of niche interests becoming finally fulfilled, where people in all kinds of different sub variations of a certain topic can gain attention and awareness for what they're doing, right? The second piece is that we're seeing this advent of AI and its effect on media, and that everything seems to be replaceable by the use of any type of technology, including human voice and sort of human presence. And ironically, what I foresee there is sort of a backlash that's going to eventually happen, right? Where the more and more as people begin to see sort of automation and non-authentic content, they're going to be seeking out and sort of thirsting for real, authentic, genuine human connection with whatever media content is coming out there, right? And that's why there's an opportunity for people to be making newsletters or to be creating podcasts or to be creating videos. Is that it's at the end of the day, it's people want something that's real and that they can feel and that they can remember. So
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I was just reading before we got onto this interview, before this discussion, about a company who just launched a new service where you can take written content and turn all this written content into a podcast. And I thought that is interesting and I know Google, Notebook LM. I know Google is doing this. I've done some stuff on it. We used to even have an avatar that was interviewing people, but it wasn't really that popular. Like it didn't. To your point, I noticed it didn't resonate super highly with people. And so I am, you know, you were just saying around authenticity. Is it authentic if I write something, but Notebook LM or whatever voice is reading it and pretending to have a conversation that is AI and it's not real? How are people going to perceive that? Do you think that we will ever? I know you said there'll be, could be an eventual backlash, but do you think people, under the age of 10 who don't know anything else, will they, one it's like when the, records came back around after records were obsolete. How do you see this, as the younger generations are coming up?
That's an interesting question. And I think you make a good point there, Daniel, which is that for humans that are below a certain age, say below the age of 18 or 16, there's going to be more difficulty in determining what's real and what's not. But I would say that unfortunately now is becoming true of almost any age, right? Is that it is more difficult to see what's real and what's not, and so that's why it becomes even more important to have something that is visibly real and that is genuinely real, right? Because when the line gets blurred so much, people stop trusting, sort of what's being shown to them as real, and they start to question whether anything is real, right? So I think to sort of conclude on that, part of that is okay, meaning there's part of that where there's a hybrid between man and machine that's already been happening, that's only going to continue to happen, right? Every human being, not just in the media but also now in health, is in some way bionic, right? We're mixing technology with human bodies or technology with media in a way that sort of causes the two to intersect. And I think we need to embrace that and say, hey, as long as there's a piece of it that is extremely genuine and extremely real, then that's what matters.
What excites you most about the future of AI? And it could be AI, it could be AI with humanoids, any sort of technology, emerging technology that's up and coming with AI. And then what also scares you the most about AI or AI mixed with, robots?
It's the same thing that gets me excited as well as scares me. And that thing is being able to take massive data sets and make sense of them. And around health, that's extremely powerful because for the first time, we're able to make sense of, say, someone's cancer data that was caught in mountains of sort of numbers and sort of records, and combine that with millions of other people's data around the same condition or health ailment, and finally come to a conclusion on what's causing it or what factors went into it. So that said, the same thing of course scares me in the sense that when you've got uh, such large data sets, there are obviously security risks to be aware of, and there's also ways that people can exploit that one has to be careful as well, right? And I don't think I need to go any further into that. I think that part is pretty self-evident.
Wow, yeah, you have one thing that can cause the most amazing effects. That same thing can also cause, the worsening effects. Maybe another pandemic, maybe other types of things that we haven't even thought of. At the same time, I keep seeing almost every day. I'm seeing something new that scientists or doctors have discovered about something. Like there's this new link to this and that, and I wonder how much of that is now driven by the ability to leverage AI in health. What an amazing time to be alive, Jeremy. But if people want to get in touch with you, maybe they're looking for an investment, maybe they want to get your advice on something. How can they do so?
Yeah, it's easy. Just go to yourise.me. That's URISE.me, just the way it sounds. And there people can get in touch via email, and look forward to connecting. So
I know. I hope that sign up for the newsletter. I know you got podcasts. You got a lot of great media up there. So I hope everyone joins. It's very interesting, but YouRise.me. Jeremy, this has been great. Next time we got to dive into magnesium. We didn't even get into that. I also have other questions about health as well. So we got to have you on again here. I know you're in New York, so there we got to meet up in New York sometime. But this has been really great, and I'm super excited to get you on the show today. So thank you for joining us on Founder's Story.
It's been a pleasure, Daniel.